end. It's never going to end. Good morning, 6:05. It is so great to be here with you on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and streaming for free, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So we are, God willing, heading down the home stretch here for the Kansas City Chiefs and the Kansas City Royals for them to pick which side of the state line they are going to be on. But as we start the show here, I can report to you first on KCMO that we are going to see an extension of the Star Bond offer on the Kansas side of the state line. That means that the deal to try to woo the teams over to Kansas will be extended. And it will be extended for 12 months. Why is that? Well, because the way the bill is written, they technically can extend it for 30 days or 60 days. Now, there can be, from this legislative body, basically a message sent to the teams that we will not consider anything you send us after such and such date, 30, 60, 90, 6 months. But technically, the teams will have a 12-month extension on the Kansas Star Bond offer. So that means they'll have more time to figure out which side of state line they want to continue playing on. Now, yesterday, there was a meeting with the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, and they teamed up with the Kansas City Area Development Council for a presentation. This took place yesterday, and a big credit to Fox 4, Jonathan Ketz, doing outstanding reporting over there, where he had a pretty deep dive into what this meeting was all about. And the part of this meeting that suggests to me that Quinton Lucas, the mayor of Kansas, on what Tim Cowden had to say here in this meeting yesterday with the Kansas City Chamber.
There's a narrative, and I understand where the narrative is coming from, that this is a violation of the border truce or an example of the border war. We disagree with that. We look at this as really a border solution.
Oh, man. Okay. So the two teams, let's reset this here for 20 seconds. And you tell me whether or not this is a violation of the border war economically between Kansas and Missouri. The two teams are like, hey, we're going to try to build some new stadiums or update Arrowhead Stadium, and we'd like to do that. And then last year, of course, there's a vote that goes down April of 2024. And the taxpayers in Jackson County say we are not extending a 3/8 cent sales tax, right? That happens. And then the teams are like, oh, man, we got to start looking at some other options here, right? They never say they're going to leave Kansas City. There's no threat to leave Kansas City. But the state of Kansas steps up and says, you know what? If you guys want to come over here, we'll play ball, no pun intended. And then, boom, there you go. There's your border war. Suddenly now the state of Missouri has to drop its pants and figure out what it needs to do to keep the teams in Missouri because they don't want them going to Kansas. And everybody is, let's be clear here, both sides are doing it, but everybody's trying to play more or less this shell game with taxpayer monies. I know that leaders on both sides, many Republicans, are going to tell you this is a good deal, this has to happen, no ifs, ands, or buts. They're entitled to that opinion. But there still is taxpayer money on the line here. And now you have two states that have been competing against each other for these teams for the better part of a year now. And it's going to be extended for one more year. And for the guys involved in the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce and the Kansas City Area Development Council to suggest that this is not a border war, but a border solution. It's only a solution if the teams were seriously looking at leaving the area. And at no point has that ever come to fruition. There has never been a threat, an insinuation, an idea that's come forth by the teams that, hey, we've got to look somewhere else. Because the vast majority of the time, they're bluffing when they say that. Sure, we've seen teams leave. You saw it in St. Louis with the Rams, but Kroenke was always going to L.A., let's be honest. I mean, teams were always getting out of Oakland. Raiders, a place was a dump. Vegas is a place to be right now. Those moves were always going to happen. There was very little that was going to prevent them from happening. But what's happening too often here in Kansas City when it comes to economic leaders, politicians, the Chamber of Commerce class, they're acting like a small market. And I understand compared to New York, LA, Chicago, we technically are in Kansas City. I get that. But you know what? You got to be proud of what you got. You have to be able to, when push comes to shove, stand on your own 2 feet and say, you know what? This is a great place to be. It's a great place to have your business. It's an amazing place to have your sports teams. Kansas City is known for its diehard sports fans. These teams are supported through and through good times and bad. And you know what? We think you, the team, should see value in that. No one ever says that. You don't hear that from these people. And if they were more in touch with the rest of us, I think they would understand that a little bit better. But they're not. They're not the kind of people that are sitting there and just hanging out with Joe the fan in Arrowhead Stadium, in parking lot L, 4 hours before a game, tailgating. They're not sitting out there in the bleachers at the K watching this team struggle for most of the past decade and finally seeing them get to the playoffs last year. They're not doing that. So they don't understand the value of that here in Kansas City. And frankly, it's a letdown for the taxpayer. It's a letdown for the fan, because these are some of the most important voices that are not part of the decision-making process per se, but have influence in some of these inner circles with the teams, with the business community, with the politicians, and most of them could not be more out of touch if they tried. So when I saw this it wasn't a press conference, but I saw this Chamber of Commerce meeting yesterday, I said to myself, boy, this is not going to sit well with Mayor Quinton Lucas. And the mayor of Kansas City is going to be on the show today in his usual Thursday at 7:30 slot on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. And you want to make sure you're tuning in then, because I've got to imagine he is not happy with the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce folks saying, Kansas, Missouri, what's the big deal? It's fine. Doesn't much matter to us. We're just here to make sure everybody gets along. This is not a violation of the border war. It is. And the mayor said this in a statement yesterday to Fox 4. He said, quote, a truce filled with unknown exceptions for whatever any party in our region finds unique or cool is no truce at all. He's not wrong. He's on to something there. You can't pick or choose what you like about a border war truce and what you don't. And you know what? Now we sit here now for another several months potentially waiting to figure out what exactly these teams are going to do, because from what I am hearing, a star bond extension on the Kansas side is going to happen for both of these teams. So on and on and on and round and round and round we go. And I'm sorry, but you know what? I can't control it. Trust me. If it was up to me, this thing would be done by now. But it's not. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on 95.7
I hope
FM.
somebody's rolling video. This is like a Netflix series that gets renewed. We're like, okay, now what's this, season 3?
Well, here's the problem. It's like the series that goes on too long, right?
Well, right.
We're
Just jump the shark.
We're in like season 8, and everyone's like, this was a 4-season, 5-season series, and you guys are just, my wife loved Grey's Anatomy. She was a huge fan of that show back in college, and that's one of those shows that she says went way too long.
Yeah.
Way too long.
I'll agree to that. Many shows do that.
I know.
You're like, you're just making stuff up now.
You're stretching, man, and that's exactly what's going on with this story as we get it rolling on a Thursday on KCMO 95.7 FM. Of course, we're streaming, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Oh, my gosh. I'm doing my best here. I know the text line's going nuts. Star bonds forever. I'm sick of it. I'm done. No, I am too. I understand. But I'm not going to sit here and blackball the story because we're all tired of it. Like, there's still new developments happening here. Oh, my gosh. All right. Coming up. Daddy's home. Yeah. Man, the people who are running the White House social media feeds need a raise. They are leaning into Daddy. You know who Daddy is, right?
Such a nice man.
Yeah, we'll get you the details on Daddy coming up on 95.7 FM.
get your attention. I really wanna be all up in your head. Yeah. If you say daddy's home for me, and I know you've been waiting for this love in your day. You know your daddy's home.
That's right, Daddy's home. This was the song on the official White House social media account last night when the president landed back in the United States after his NATO trip. There we go.
You already know what it is. So my lady say,
Daddy's home. That's right. Mark's jiving and bumping in there. Oh, my goodness. Give these guys a raise and gals a raise with the White House social media team. This is brilliant.
Pretty catchy.
Oh, man, that is a little Usher from back in the day. Daddy's home. Now, where does this all stem from? This comes from what the NATO chief said to President Trump when he was talking about Iran, Israel, the Middle East in general. And the NATO chief made the insinuation that Trump was, in fact, the daddy in all this. Here's what it sounded like in the last couple of days.
I mean, we may do papers on it, Marco. Maybe we're going to do papers. I don't even know if you need them. They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes. Then it's easier to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes use strong language to
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while, you have to use a certain word.
I think you have to join the house.
That was the NATO chief. Then Daddy must use some strong language.
They don't know what the they're doing. You understand that?
And Trump's like, yeah, you know, once in a while, Dad's got to get involved and use some strong language. So to take this to the next level, that little daddy drop by the NATO chief to President Trump a couple of days ago gets followed up on by the global media yesterday. Trump was doing his press conference as he was getting set to leave the NATO summit in the Netherlands. And he had a reporter from overseas ask him whether or not he views the rest of the countries in NATO as basically his children. And it was brilliant and hilarious.
Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, who is your friend, he called you daddy earlier. Do you regard your NATO allies as kind of children?
No, he likes me. I think he likes me. If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? No? He did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy.
He did it very affectionately. Oh, Daddy, here's my daddy.
Daddy, you're my daddy.
Oh, man, that's great. So actually, that was somewhat of a humbling response by President Trump. You'd think that Trump would actually come out and say, well, of course, we are the leaders of the free world. Everybody is our child compared to what we put into NATO, compared to what we do on the global stage. Yes, we are everybody's daddy. He could have done that. And frankly, you would have expected Donald Trump to do that. He didn't. He just had fun with it, right? He actually didn't take the Trumpian approach to that answer. He just made it lighthearted, which of course he'll never get credit for. But the more important thing is this. It's not what Trump says. It's what he does. And in this specific instance, for the last 4 years, the world didn't have a daddy. We didn't. There was nobody in charge. The inmates were running the asylum. The kids were fighting in the schoolyard. The kids were fighting in the schoolyard, to use that analogy from earlier. I'm sorry, that's how it was.
Come on, man.
And that's one of the reasons that Donald Trump is back in the White House. There was no daddy. It was the permanent substitute teacher with Joe Biden at the helm. And guess what? The kids who are knuckleheads in the schoolyard, they need enforcement, right? If you're a parent, you know this. Every kid is different in terms of how you parent them. Some you can raise your voice and their back straighten up real fast. Some, Well, you know what? You need a little more tough loving. And with a 6, a 4, and a 1-year-old right now, learning that one the hard way. You got to parent kids differently. It's just how they're wired. And the world needed that parent. They needed daddy. And finally, we've got daddy back. Okay? Could you imagine right now, with Iran and Israel and everything going on the world stage, Putin, Ukraine, how that's hopefully wrapping up sooner rather than later? Could you imagine Kamala Harris having any idea what to do with any of this? Having any global respect right now? Goodness gracious. I mean, even if you voted for her, you've got to be able to admit right now that there is far more respect on the world stage for this guy, Donald Trump, being back in the White House than there ever would have been with Kamala Harris. I mean, please, even if you voted for her, you've got to be able to look in the mirror and give yourself that much truth, right? Come on now, please. So when the White House rolls out this Daddy's Home video yesterday, it's not just about Trump literally being back in the United States after the NATO summit. To me, there was actually a 4-year message there of Daddy's Home in the White House after a 4-year hiatus. And the world is not only safer for it and a better place for it on the global stage, the United States of America is better off for it. Because Trump also goes over there and he starts telling these countries, would you start carrying your load, please? Would you start chipping in the monies that you're supposed to be chipping in for NATO? Because guess what? We're doing more than our part here, okay? It's time for you to step up. Because guess what? Especially you freeloaders in Europe, you're the ones who are most at risk, and we're sick of basically carrying your load. So it's time for you guys to step to the plate.
I don't know if you know the history of baseball. When the Yankees would fire and rehire Billy Martin all the time, the guy was one of the scrappiest guys. I mean, he was the first one out to the fight, out of the dugout. And it's just like that. It's like you go through these malaise, you're like, where's Billy Martin?
Yeah.
And where's Donald Trump? You know, we had him 4 years. We went off for 4 years. Like, get him back.
Get him back. And you know what? The American people realized that back on November 5th. And we're all better off for it. 913-408-7957. On the text line, Pete, Kamala went on the Call Her Daddy podcast during the campaign. Look who's awkwardly cackling now. Yes, that is well done. That was the closest she ever was to being anybody's daddy, going on the Call Her Daddy podcast. Oh, man. 913-408-7957. The most insane thing I saw on social media I just happened to wake up to this morning. Coming up next.
Call Mundo 913-408-7957. Now on 95.7 FM.
The most insane thing that I've seen on social media all week came last hour. So I get in here. I'm mostly prepared for the show when I get in here. I got to make sure I pull the audio cuts and Mark pops them into the system, not to take you too far behind the scenes. John's getting ready for the news, and that's usually what's going on here in the hour or so leading up to showtime at 6. So I'm, mostly set for the morning, and then I just happen to pull up my social media feeds on my desktop over here, and I go to X, formerly Twitter, and the first thing that shows up, these algorithms are getting good, by the way, because they knew that this would be of interest to me, is a clip from CNN last night from the Abby Phillips show. And I look at this clip, and I had to go find it somewhere else to make sure this was not like AI generated, because nowadays, right, you see things on social media, and you're pretty good at eyeballing what's real and what's not, but there's still things you got to double check once in a while, right? But this was a real clip from CNN last night. Jamal Bowman, remember that guy? He used to be a congressman out of New York. He lost in a primary last year to a Democrat who was much more moderate than Jamal Bowman was. He served in the United States Congress from 21 until 25. And now I guess he's looking for some attention. So he goes on CNN last night, and he says one of the most insane, ridiculous, absurd things I've ever heard somebody say with a straight face on cable news. And that's saying something, because cable news has become basically a bunch of carnival barkers trying to one-up each other. But this was Jamal Bowman last night on CNN, and I'm glad I didn't catch this live, because I would have jumped out of my bedroom window.
You can't be calm about this. I'm a black man in America. The reason why heart disease... I'm white, I can't comment Listen to what I'm saying. The reason why heart disease and cancer and obesity and diabetes are bigger in the black community is because of the stress we carry from having to deal with being called the N-word directly or indirectly every day.
Is that Jamal pulling another false alarm right there? Is that what that is?
I was thinking that was the guy, wasn't it?
Yes.
I didn't want to chime in and go, This is the clown that pulled the alarm saying he needed to get to a vote, or he was trying to hold up a vote.
Yes, he's the guy that pulled a fire alarm in the halls of Congress a couple of years back. Well, he just pulled another false alarm is what he just did there. My recommendation to anybody who is blaming their obesity on the fact that they are called the N-word directly or indirectly every day would be to stop listening to rap music, because that's the place where you hear it in American culture in 2025.
I was thinking to myself, I'm sure he hears it every day, but the context is going to vary.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
There was a French comedian, I'm going to throw it out there. He's like, sees the N-word on all the movies and subtitles. He's like, what? You don't know what that word is. On subtitles in France, that comes up apparently as friends, he says. So the N-word
really?
means friend.
Okay.
So Jamal's being called a friend.
Yeah, I
apparently.
guess.
A lot.
I just don't know what world he's living in, because the most usage, obviously, that you will see is in pop culture. It is in music. It is between people of one racial group where you see that, right? And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole and get into the debate of who should use it and who shouldn't. Frankly, I don't think it should be used by anybody. That's my opinion on the word. We get rid of it. We don't use it. But I understand there may be a nuanced conversation to have on why certain people of certain subsets should be using or can use that word while there shouldn't. But for Jamal Bowman, a former congressman, to say the reason why heart disease and cancer and obesity rates and diabetes are bigger in the black community is because they get called the N-word every day. I mean, how do you take anybody that says something that ridiculous as a serious human being? How do you possibly do it? And even if, I mean, goodness gracious, it's totally untrue. There's nothing to back it up. But then I also sat there and I thought to myself, gosh, what? Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will make me obese? What are we doing here, Jamal? I mean, none of this makes any sense. But this is the kind of stuff that you're seeing on CNN. 913-408-7957 is our text line and our studio line on KCMO. I just had to share that with you because I was like, first off, I knew that you were not watching CNN last night. I knew that. I mean, unless you were just looking to turn your brain into mush for fun at about 8, 9 p.m., you were not going to be watching that last night. But they do get some good clips on that show because that's where Scott Jennings puts on a master class every night on how to basically own the libs over there. And it was on that show with Abby Phillips. And they are just rolling through crazy people after crazy people to, I guess, get attention. And the show, does all right, does okay. One of the better shows on CNN, not saying much, kind of like being the tallest midget, but it is one of the better programs that they've got. But Jamal Bowman said, I'm going to take this thing to the next level and see what ends up happening. On the text line, Pete, I'm absolutely positive that Jamal Bowman has backed up that commentary with decades of clinical studies. Yeah, I'm sure you're right about that on the text line, 7816. Spot on. Oh, my goodness. Hope your morning is off to a great start. Glad you're joining us on KCMO Talk Radio. We've got Mayor Lucas on at 7:35. We also have Josh Hawley coming on the show at 8:30 this morning. Do not miss that here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Back here in Kansas, did you see there was a protest yesterday outside of one of Jerry Moran's office? Oh, you missed it? Well, yeah, because there were literally 15 people outside of Jerry Moran's office protesting the big, beautiful bill. Now, the push in Congress is to have this big, beautiful bill that would extend the president's tax cuts on his desk by Independence Day. We are up against that deadline, right? I mean, that is coming in hot. I don't know if it's going to get done by July 4th. It seems like there's a lot of people who think it will not get done by July 4th. But Trump is basically saying to the U.S. Senate, you guys better stay at work. I don't want you going home, going on vacation until you got this bill on my desk, which is something I just continue to really appreciate because too many people who spend their lives in politics are like, well, we got all this vacation. Well, we'll get to it around Labor Day. It's like, that's not how the private sector works, okay? Would you guys do the job that you were elected to do on behalf of the American people, and you're not going to go home until the job is done? It's just so refreshing to have this attitude, John.
We're not here to work around Congress's schedule.
No.
Right?
No.
We can't say, we can't do that because in 3 days this will happen.
We've got our summer recess.
Yeah.
No, get your butts to work. Do the damn job you're elected to do and stay there until it's done. So yesterday in Olathe, as KCTV5 reports here, people gathered on Wednesday, June 25th, to oppose the one big, beautiful bill. That is President Trump's spending bill. Protesters stood outside Republican Senator Jerry Moran's office in Olathe, Kansas. Here's the KCTV5 report.
Well, people gathered in Olathe today to oppose that big, beautiful act. Protesters stood outside Republican U.S. Senator Jerry Moran's office. They're concerned about that bill gutting Medicaid and taking thousands of people off SNAP benefits, as well as putting rural health care systems at severe risk. They're hoping to send a message to Senator Moran.
It's a bad bill for Kansans, and it's a bad bill for the country. And we just want to urge him to do the right thing and to vote against H.R. 1.
We did reach out to Senator Moran's office. His staff are not commenting on the protests.
Well, how many people do you think were out there in Olathe? Mark, did you even know as an Olathe resident that there was a Jerry Moran office?
No, I didn't.
Well, honestly, if you drive down Ridgeview and you get to College, there's a sign there that says Jerry Moran's office, and it's about 2 miles west of that intersection there.
Really?
Yes.
I actually drive by there a lot. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know where exactly it is. I just know the sign I see sometimes on College and Ridgeview that says Jerry Moran's office that way. It's like 2.5 miles down the road.
I'm guessing 6 people found it.
You're shorting them a little bit. I counted 15 people in the video.
I was one of them, and I was just going down to pay my water bill.
Oh, man. Yeah, there's literally, the KCTV5 video has 15 people on a street corner in Olathe protesting the big, beautiful bill. Jerry Moran represents about 3 million Kansans, and I'm pretty sure he saw that rally of 15 people and said, that's it. I'm done. I can't possibly support this thing now. Very much tongue-in-cheek. But this is where it's like, if you're going to put on a protest, you've got to understand the optics game. You just have to. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, you've got to understand the optics game. And for too many people, they simply don't. Coming up, the 6 at 6. Top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour. We'll get to here on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
It's 6:50 on a Thursday morning. Let's do it.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on 95.7 KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Well, my phone is now blowing up because as we started off the show with this morning, I would expect a star bond extension to take place on the Kansas side of the state line for the Chiefs and the Royals here in the days to come because, well, why not? Let's keep the party going, baby, right? So it looks like we are not going to have an immediate end to the Chiefs-Royals Stadium saga. And instead, this thing will continue on for the foreseeable future.
I don't know if I should do the woo or I'm getting pissed now. One or the other.
You know, for my money,
I'm getting pissed now.
That's just me. That's just me. I get why it's happening. I understand all the parties involved and why this is beneficial to them. But, yeah, I would say we're all getting a little pissed now. That's my 2 cents.
Number 2.
Next up in the 6 at 6, Iran, Israel, and the U.S. agree that the Islamic Republic nuclear sites were badly damaged, despite reporting from CNN and some others that, well, they might have been back a few weeks, maybe a few months.
Fake news.
Yeah. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman told Al Jazeera, our nuclear installations have been badly damaged. And this comes after President Trump, of course, said in recent days that the targets for the nuclear sites were destroyed or badly damaged himself. And now we've got that confirmation. Also, you have Israel's Defense Forces Chief of Staff, who said its assessment is that Iran's nuclear program has been significantly damaged. And the Israel Atomic Energy Commission described the U.S. strikes as devastating. So who are you going to take at their word? Israel's intelligence, the U.S. intelligence, along with apparently some confirmation from Iran, or CNN and the New York Times? Your pick. Your pick. But I think I know which one I'm going to choose.
Number 3.
In our top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour, we've got some business changes coming to 35th and Prospect after a press conference in that part of town earlier this week following what was a very violent weekend around Kansas City, multiple homicides in that part of town. And now 2 businesses under fire are making changes. KCTV5 reports here a neighborhood activist reported that they agreed to close earlier to try to deter some trouble. On Monday, city and county officials joined community leaders outside of a BP gas station on the southwest corner of 35th and Prospect. They vowed to crack down on businesses that allow loitering and criminal behavior. 9 days prior, 4 people were shot at the intersection. One of them died. We heard from Melissa Johnson, Jackson County prosecutor, on this earlier in the year. And now you've got some of these businesses, like the gas station, which was previously a 24-hour operation, agreeing to change its hours to 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. So that is a step in the right direction. And that is something that hopefully will help deter some of the criminal activities that are happening in this part of Kansas City. It's not that simple. Of course, we know that. There's a lot more to it than just not being a 24-hour business that will deter violent crime and homicides from taking place at your intersection. But I suppose if it's a step in the right direction, then we can get behind it. And if Melissa Johnson is going to be cracking down on these thugs around Kansas City, that's obviously even more welcomed compared to her predecessor, Jean Peters Baker.
Number 4.
Next up in our 6 at 6, a KCPD officer was injured in a crash yesterday afternoon. A police vehicle with its lights on was heading eastbound on Westport Road, assisting other officers in stopping a stolen car at about 5 p.m. The vehicle then approached Broadway Boulevard, went east into the westbound lanes of Westport Road to get around traffic. When the vehicle made a right turn onto southbound Broadway, it was struck by a Volkswagen Passat traveling east on Westport Road. The driver and front seat passenger of the Volkswagen were unharmed. However, while the driver and the backseat police academy ride-along were uninjured, An officer in the front seat of the patrol vehicle was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, and KCPD saying the injured officer is now in stable condition. So that is obviously welcome news on that front.
Number 5.
Well, tonight, Country Stampede gets underway at Missouri Amphitheater, and an old switcheroo, Luke Bryan, who was supposed to be the headliner tonight, announced that he has an illness. He is going to be replaced by Eric Church. Sounds like an upgrade to me. Jeez, big time upgrade. Oh, man, that's a pretty good swap if you got those tickets.
Well, I was going to say, I'll bet you're interested. He's got the Springsteen song.
Oh, yeah,
that's a great song.
That's a throwback. That's a good one.
Yeah, Luke's been on TV a lot, and so I haven't kept up with his music. I'm not a big country fan anyway, but I know, 10 years ago he was on a roll?
Yeah, he was on a roll 10 years ago, but he's kind of past his prime. But Eric Church, I saw him at T-Mobile. Would have been the winter of 22, I think it was. And he puts on a great show. Great show. So if you're going tonight, if you won one of our 13 4-packs we gave away yesterday, congratulations. Great news for you.
Number 6.
And to wrap it up, the NBA draft. First round was last night, and the number 1 pick, as expected, Cooper Flagg out of Duke, going to the Dallas Mavericks. Number 1 pick in the NBA draft last night. There is your 6 at 6 on KCMO. All right, I got a tease for you on Josh Hawley. He will be here at 8:30. I'll give you that next. 7:05. Good morning. It is great to be here with you on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We are streaming, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. We do have a Pentagon briefing going on right now. Breaking news, Pete Hegseth is addressing the Iran strike intel leak. Mark, if we could pop up Fox News, please, on your end, and carry some of what Pete Hegseth, Pentagon chief, is saying right now about the intel leak at the Pentagon. Let's do this.
The press corps miss historic moments. You miss historic moments like 5% at NATO, which when you hear, I was in the closed door briefing. I wish there could have been cameras in there. When you heard the prime ministers and presidents of other countries, to a man and to a woman, looking at President Trump and saying, this never could have happened. Never would have happened. It seemed impossible 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 8 years ago. But here we are because of your leadership. If you ask them the question, I bet they'd say the same thing. But searching for scandals, you miss historic moments, like recruiting at the Pentagon. Historic levels in the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. Yeah, maybe there'll be a little mention here or there, but because it was under President Trump's leadership, because Americans are responding to him as commander-in-chief, the press corps doesn't want to write about it. Or bring us to the topic of the moment, the highly successful strikes in Iran. Let me read the bottom line here. President Trump directed the most complex and secretive military operation in history, and it was a resounding success, resulting in a ceasefire agreement and the end of the 12-day war. There's been a lot of discussion about what happened and what didn't happen. Step back for a second. Because of decisive military action, President Trump created the conditions to end the war, decimating, choose your word, obliterating, destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities. I want to read some of the assessments that have been provided, because whether it's fake news, CNN, MSNBC, or the New York Times, there's been fawning coverage of a preliminary assessment. I've had a chance to read it. Every outlet has breathlessly reported on a preliminary assessment from DIA. I'm looking at it right now. Again, it was preliminary, a day and a half after the actual strike, when it admits itself in writing that it requires weeks to accumulate the necessary data to make such an assessment. It's preliminary. It points out that it's not been coordinated with the intelligence community at all. There's low confidence in this particular report. It says in the report there are gaps in the information. It says in the report multiple linchpin assumptions are what this assessment, a linchpin assumption, you know what that is? That means your entire premise is predicated on a linchpin. If you're wrong, everything else is wrong. And yet, and still, this report acknowledges it's likely severe damage. Again, this is preliminary, but leaked because someone had an agenda to try to muddy the waters and make it look like this historic strike wasn't successful. I'm going to get to the chairman in a moment because he's going to lay out the particulars for you based on his professional military experience. But here's what other folks are saying. The DIA that put that report out says that this is a preliminary low-confidence report and will continue to be refined as additional intelligence becomes available. How about the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission? The devastating U.S. strikes on Fordow destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility inoperable. Have any of these quotes made their way into the New York Times or the Washington Post? MSNBC? CNN? Any of these quotes? How about this one? This is a new one from the UN, the United Nations. No friend of the United States, or certainly Israel often. Here's the head of the UN Atomic Energy Agency this morning, Rafael Grossi. U.S. and Israeli strikes caused enormous damage to Iran's nuclear sites. Don't take my word for it. How about the IDF's chief of staff? I can say here that the assessment is that we significantly damaged the nuclear program is by years. I repeat, years. The Iranian foreign minister, the spokesman, our nuclear installations have been badly damaged, that's for sure. I'm sure that's an understatement. John Radcliffe, the director of the CIA, putting out a statement just last night. CIA can confirm that a body of credible intelligence indicates Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged by recent targeted strikes. This includes new intelligence from a historically reliable, very different than preliminary assessment with low confidence. He's saying historically reliable and accurate source and method that several key Iranian nuclear facilities were destroyed.
All right, that is Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, right now live at the Pentagon, and he is basically sharing all the available information from not just, our intel, but from Israel's intel, from the UN, and from others around the world who are basically confirming that enormous damage was done to the Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend. And basically, they're using this as a reason to try to continue to destroy the credibility or whatever is left of the credibility of CNN and the New York Times, who have led the way on this reporting that would suggest that, these strikes were not nearly as effective as the White House is letting on. That's the purpose of this press conference. And that's what Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, is doing right now live over at the Pentagon. So they're laying that out right now. And, my first reaction on this was to be like, oh, come on, don't worry about it. These guys are totally irrelevant. Just move on. But the more that this week has unfolded, I've started to agree wholeheartedly with their approach here. Because especially for the men and women down at Whiteman Air Force Base who pulled off this incredible strike over the weekend, they deserve it as much as anybody else. Our men and women down the road at Whiteman deserve to be defended here if we've got the facts to back up what actually happened. So while the part of me was like, hey, we're giving CNN and the New York Times, who have led the way on this reporting, way too much credit and way too much energy and airtime and oxygen, it's like, you know what? Hold on a second here. Actually, no. There's still outlets that do have an enormous amount of sway, sad to say. And this administration is not just standing up for what appears to be the truth. They're standing up for the men and women who pulled off this mission and landed back here in Missouri and have spent the last 4 days having to see headlines from some media outlets suggesting that, they didn't really do what it was reported they did. And you know what? That's a disservice to them. So if nothing else, Pete Hegseth and the Commander-in-Chief Donald Trump are standing up for the men and women down at Whiteman and the job that they did over the weekend in Iran, John.
I'm with you on the sense that I'm like, come on, we all see, we know what happened. Let it go, okay?
Yeah.
But, to your point, it fits in. We're building brick by brick every stupid thing they've done. The Hunter Biden thing's Russian disinformation and all the people that signed a letter. Brick by brick, and we're still building on that right now about Biden's cognitive health, et cetera. So I think it is important to stack the bricks here as we build this house.
I totally agree. And earlier in the week, I was like, just stop giving CNN and the New York Times this much attention. But as the week's gone on, I'm like, no, this is actually exactly what needs to happen. Press conferences live at the Pentagon saying, here's what the UN is saying, here's what Israel is saying, here's what our intelligence is suggesting. And the New York Times has some leaker that is going way out on a limb to basically try to discredit the men and women down at Whiteman and the Commander-in-Chief. We all know the game that they're playing here. And if the facts are on your side, it's incredibly important, especially at this moment in not just American history, but world history, to call it out, to go after it, and do press conferences at 8 o'clock on the East Coast, live at the Pentagon, 7 o'clock here in Kansas City, saying, hey, you guys are full of it. I mean, that's basically what we're doing right now. The Pentagon is hosting a press conference saying these media outlets are full of you-know-what. That's what's happening as we sit here right now.
They don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
They don't. That's basically this press conference in a nutshell. All right, at 7:15, Mayor Lucas will be here at 7:35 on KCMO Talk Radio. Coming up with the breaking news, I didn't get to it, but Josh Hawley will be here at 8:30, and I will share with you next a Josh Hawley take that I think is going to be part of the national conversation in the not-too-distant future. I will tell you what that is before the mayor of Kansas City, Quinton Lucas, joins us at the bottom of the hour on KCMO. All right, if you are getting set for the weekend and you're like, what am I doing this weekend? Oh, yeah, I should probably get engaged. Yeah, you probably should. If it's like entering your mind of, I probably should get engaged, then you know what she's thinking. Why hasn't he proposed yet? Well, you go to Diamonds Direct, where right now the deal cannot be beat. What is the deal? When you buy your engagement ring, you will get a free wedding band to go along with it. Where else are you getting that kind of a deal? Now, if you think you're sacrificing something else by getting a deal like that, you're not. Angie and the team at Diamonds Direct has been taking care of me for 6-7 years now. Multiple purchases there. And you get the white glove service. They got a great play area for the kids if you need it. And heck, you want a glass of champagne, they'll hook you up with that too while you're shopping. They will stay within your budget. They're not, these folks who are trying to make you feel uncomfortable with how much you're spending. They just want to know what your budget is, and then they'll find you the highest quality piece within your budget. So go tell them that we sent you here at KCMO Talk Radio and take advantage of this incredible offer right now. Buy the engagement ring and get the free wedding band to go along with it at diamondsdirect.com or right down the road at 119th and Row.
It's Mundo in the Morning. Now on FM at 95.7. Set a preset on your radio. KCMO Talk Radio.
So here's my prediction, 7:24 on a sleepy late June 2025 morning. I think that Josh Hawley is going to run for president in 2028. And the reason I say that is because, first off, he's always been very ambitious. And heck, he signed his 8th grade yearbook with like a Hawley 2024 tag on there. That was something that came up when he was running the first time around, which is fascinating. But more so because he's continuing to try to find this unique lane. He has not said anything yet on social media about the Iranian strikes. He will be on the show at 8:30 this morning. I will ask him about the Iranian strikes, which, of course, at the very least, I think he should be commending the men and women of Whiteman Air Force Base who pulled off this incredible strike. And heck, I mean, these are people right in his state. At the very least, you know, these men and women don't have a choice, right? The commander-in-chief says, go do these strikes. You go do the strikes. They're not interested in your opinions on the strikes. You just got to go do it. So if nothing else, I think saying something positive about the men and women at Whiteman is important. But the fact that he hasn't said anything yet leads me to believe that he's, once again, keeping the people who are in Trump's inner circle at an arm's length to try to figure out his own lane that he can capture to make a run for president. We know he's not like this establishment guy, but he also is really not in the MAGA inner circle right now, Josh Hawley. So Josh Hawley has tried to create this lane for himself that is defined by American populism, isolationism, pro-union, Christian, pro-family. And I don't know if this block of people is large enough or really exists in America in 2025 to give you a backing to run for president. But that's kind of this lane that Josh Hawley is trying to create. It's Trump-ish, but it's not full Trump, right? Like, I don't know if that lane of people and that subset of people is large enough to have a presidential campaign, but it's like Trumpism, quasi some Bernie Sanders in there. We know about his $15 an hour federal minimum wage proposal that he threw out a couple of weeks ago, which, by the way, went nowhere. Like, nothing came of it. It was just like a media thing, and then it just went away 24 hours later. So I don't know what the point of it was. But once again, it was laying the foundation for attention for what I believe is going to be a presidential run in 2028. And there's like, and someone said this to me recently about Josh Hawley. They said, hey, there's kind of like a Teddy Roosevelt approach he's going for here. And I thought that was a very good analogy. And when you think about Teddy Roosevelt, you think about the trust busters and, you know, the anti-monopoly thing. And that is a big part of Josh Hawley's political presentation right now. And he's also, you know, fighting for the little guy. He had this quote the other day about artificial intelligence saying, quote, there's no way I'm going to sit back and say to the working people of my state and this country, we're just going to let AI come for you. Now, I understand that AI is here, right? I use it. I question it, but it's here. But it fits into that whole mentality of populism, pro-union, isolationist, mixing in with Christian pro-family values that he's trying to figure out a lane for. And I don't know if it's going to work. I mean, right now, I think he's trying to pull off an inside straight, and that's difficult to do because Trump's going to basically be able to pick his successor, and he's theoretically going to pick somebody within his inner circle. But it doesn't mean he's not going to try. When you got those ambitions, obviously, it doesn't mean he's not going to try. But Josh Hawley will also be on the show coming up this morning at 8:30 on KCMO Talk Radio. The mayor of Kansas City, Quinton Lucas, is next, and he may have some beef with the Chamber of Commerce. We'll ask him about it coming up.
If it's happening in KCMO, it's on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here's Pete Mundo.
As always, a lot to get to with the mayor of Kansas City. Quinton Lucas is here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM and always streaming at KCMOTalkRadio.com or on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Well, Mr. Mayor, it's always good to have you here. We appreciate the time as always. And I want to start with a comment that came out of the Kansas City Chamber meeting yesterday when Tim Cowden said this.
There's a narrative, and I understand where the narrative is coming from, that this is a violation of the border truce or an example of the border war. We disagree with that. We look at this as really a border solution.
That, of course, in reference to the Chiefs and the Royals. How would you respond to that, Mr. Mayor?
I mean, I disagree, and I have great respect for Tim and I guess the group of people who assembled. But Pete, let's, one part of what we've learned from the Trump era and I guess the Mamdani era is that people want truth and authenticity in politics. Is there any person in this whole region who doesn't think that there is a battle between incentives in both states right now? Every other week on the news, there's a story of, well, Kansas will give them $1.7 billion. So Missouri passes a law that pays for half of a stadium for $1.5 billion. So they're at $800 million. How much will Clay County give versus Kansas City versus Jackson County versus Johnson County? I mean, it's obviously a border war incentive battle. It is obviously what everybody actually was trying to get rid of, which is to say that, and I agree with the logic of why we came up with the truce some years ago, which was that when you get in a race on incentives, when there will be no new net economic activity for the region, then the loss is sustained by the taxpayers. I'm not becoming Pat Toohey of the Show Me Institute, but on this regard, he isn't wrong. And the reason that you know that is because both teams have continued to say they're going to stay in the Kansas City metro area. So in terms of new economic activity, you're not actually, you'll get new, but it's not going to be versus that would have come from somewhere else. So, look, I don't take it personally. I don't take offense to it, but I am going to be real with it to the voters and note that there was legislation passed in the Missouri legislature a few weeks ago so that they can compete with the legislation passed in the Kansas legislature that was going to save the teams money if they moved. That's what's happening. Kansas City, North Kansas City, and Johnson County are all in conversations right now to try to shift arguably more taxpayer dollars to support stadiums. And the reason we're in that is because somebody else is doing it the same. This is a classic prisoner's dilemma for an economist. And so it is a problem with what was once the border war truce. And my biggest challenge with the border war truce is this, and saying that this is different or this is an exception. If you create an exception for everything you think is cool or unique, you don't actually have a truce at all. If I'm saying, Pete, I'm going to respect this, that, or the other thing, except when I have my fingers crossed behind my back, then, it's not a real one. And that's too bad, but, heck, that's classic economics and how humans have interacted for as long as we've been around.
So now we sit here and we wait. I'm hearing that the Kansas Star Bond offer is expected to be extended here in the not-too-distant future. So we kick the can down the road further. And as the mayor of Kansas City, as you've noted many times in recent weeks, you've got a lot of other things that you need to be working on right now. But it looks like whether you like it or not, this is not going anywhere. So, is there anything you can do to expedite the timeline on all of this?
I mean, look, there are maybe a few distinct things I can do. One of the most obvious ones, which I think probably a growing percentage of your listeners and frankly people on the left, right, and in the middle in this region would say, is to say you get out of the sweepstakes. And to, kind of throw up your hands and say, you know what, we've done what we'll do, but y'all got to figure it out from there. That is an approach. That is an aggressive one and an ambitious one, but frankly, it's one that, people as disparate as Casey Tenants and former Missouri gubernatorial candidate Bill Eigel, a conservative Republican, have proposed. I'm not at that position. I don't think that is the right play. I do think that large venues belong in major American cities. Growing cities have them. Growing and important cities have big and major events. That's why we stay in the discussion. But I think it is regrettable that it seems that this is a chat that continues to not have 9 lives. I don't know how many lives it's on right now. Kansas City's put compelling offers in front of our teams. I think that those are compelling enough that, they're a good story for sticking around. I understand that the teams have the opportunity to do as much research as they like, but yeah, I don't know if the extension is a good thing.
Mayor Lucas is joining us on KCMO. And, you've heard some on the team side say, hey, listen, we were rejected by the voters, so now we've got to kind of do our due diligence. And I understand that from their perspective. At the same time, what is that fine line between doing due diligence, but also respecting the taxpayers on both sides of the state line and those who are in charge of a lot of other things on both sides of the state line beyond figuring out who's playing baseball and football where?
There is going to be a book written on this someday by somebody who doesn't give a flattering portrayal of what occurred. Now, look, were the original flaws, the original sins in some places versus others? I do think that if you go way back, Jackson County was a very difficult negotiating partner. If we're going back to the circuit, I think 2023 time frame when the teams are trying to say, let's have a clear deal, that led to a very short time window on a campaign. There were decisions made throughout that I think a lot of people have disagreements with, but nonetheless, state legislatures acting in 2 different special sessions and 2 states with lots of other issues. The amount of attention, I don't know if this is the sort of thing that people necessarily want government agencies to do. That being said, I would say this to the people. A lot of people say you should do everything else, but a whole lot of people ask me about it. And you've been talking about this for a while, too. And you can read ratings and look at the number of clicks and all of that. People engage with this. This is one time where I'm not going to knock, be it, Keatsman, Fesco, whomever in the world. People are interested and people care. And so, look, I'd love for them to care about a bunch of other things that I post and talk about every day. But the teams are big business. They're important. That's part of why we're talking about real money for them. But I do think it'll be good when everybody gets to move forward with what's next. I certainly hope that's in Kansas City. I think that would be good for the entire region at a time where you're seeing cities build more stuff that's interesting and exciting for people. But we'll see what happens.
Mayor Lucas is here on KCMO. You mentioned him earlier. You made the Mamdani reference. He's the guy who won the Democrat primary in New York City in their mayoral race. And, you alluded to something that he has been in favor of here yesterday on your social media. The only, I think, opinion I saw from you on that was that being a fan of accessible and free transit is good for all American cities. But the broader question is this. You're seeing major American cities in this country pick further and further left mayors, and this guy's the favorite now to be the next mayor. As somebody who considers himself a more moderate Democrat in a Midwest major American city, is this a good thing for your preferred political party to see this leftward movement in major cities where, frankly, there's little evidence it's working on behalf of the people?
Well, I was with the question until you got to the last point. Look, you're seeing different trends in different American cities. In San Francisco, they elected a pretty clear moderate, replacing the prior mayor with whom I had a relationship, but I know the current one. In Houston, they went a more moderate, even probably conservative Democrat approach. And in New York City, I think we'll continue to see this was a Democratic electorate. A fairly heavily Democratic, it's all Democratic electorate, but fairly progressive electorate in New York City. A few things, and I put this on my social media today, which was a voter breakdown from our public safety sales tax. The public safety sales tax in Kansas City passed 60-40. It did its worst downtown, midtown, and the traditional east side of Kansas City are probably most progressive areas. That said, certainly for our east siders, those are the people most impacted by crime. There are sometimes different views for how things should be solved. If you're somebody who lives on acreage, let's say in the northland of the city, versus somebody who is living in an apartment in the core of the city and perhaps has known both victims and assailants of certain things. And so the way I see it is this. Urban cores are no different than states or no different than anything else, which is that you need people that can actually speak to a balance of the issues. I have been critiqued in my career for seeming not too dedicated to one side or the other, being a flip-flopper, being anything under the sun. What I call it is frankly just balance. It is absolutely very simply balance. Some to my right this week are blasting me because they say you're attacking businesses for certain crime issues. I'm saying yes, if they allow for numerous code of ordinance violations on their property, if they're they're the ones flouting rules all the time, but they have unlicensed clubs that should be punished, but there should also be jails for the individuals in them. I don't think that there is a pure left approach to where cities are going or a pure right approach, which people would have been saying 6 months ago. I think that electorates are looking at balance in many ways. Who is most charismatic? And I think that's how decisions are made. I don't think I won my race just because of, my political identities. I think I hit the flesh. I was out on the streets, and I think that's still what wins.
But here's the other thing I noticed on some of the trends in New York City and also in this public safety sales tax information that you shared. And that is, to me, the more progressive parts of the city are preferring, obviously, more liberal approaches to public policy. And that also kind of lines up with your whiter parts of the liberal constituency. I mean, you look at New York, and blacks and Latinos largely preferred Andrew Cuomo over Mamdani. It was the white progressive class that preferred Mamdani, and you see some of that, too, in this public safety tax, downtown, midtown, whiter part of Kansas City saying, we don't want taxes for the police. So I think that there's that going on right now within the political party. Do you see that as well?
There is a clear, and I don't know if this is the show for it, but what the heck, you asked about it. The Democratic Party coalition is fascinating. A few things, particularly. You hit the nail on the head on that point. The other thing, if you look at the Trump election, and President Trump isn't President Trump just because of a bunch of radical conservatives, right? You saw growth in blacks. You saw growth in Latinos. Still lost those groups largely, but you're seeing movement for him in ways that didn't happen previously. And you are seeing, I won't call it a big divorce, but a very different view in your total black vote outcome versus those of white progressives. It has always been known for those who watch politics. Your black voter base is actually in many ways more conservative than, let's say, your white progressive base. And you start to see the leaders themselves, Jim Clyburn versus AOC, right? And granted, I can go with people the same age, but you probably still see the same breakdown. As you go to younger candidates and voters, that is minimized a bit. But I do think that is going to be the big question of American cities in the future. There's a reason that Eric Adams is the current mayor of New York City. And part of that was a coalition of black voters matched largely with moderate white voters and others. He has never been the darling of white progressives. That's why the New York general election will be at least somewhat interesting. I do think Mamdani wins. But I think if you look at the next presidential election, it'll be interesting. Joe Biden was able to win the Democratic primary largely because of the support of black voters and some other groups, traditional older white union folks and others, white progressives being somewhere different. This will be the key question as we come to 2028 in Democratic Party politics.
Last thing, Mr. Mayor, in the next minute, of course, there was a big press conference this week, 35th and Prospect, in the wake of a lot of violent crime that happened in that part of Kansas City. I saw that you've got some of these businesses in the area that are no longer going to be 24 hours a day open. How much can that actually help solve the issues in that part of Kansas City?
Secondary effects. It's a doctrine that happens a lot of times, and frankly, all of us know it. Pete, if somebody wanted to open a nightclub behind your house, you probably wouldn't like it. Why? Not because you hate clubs or dancing, but because people are going to hang out late. Even if they said they could have sound buffers to protect it, there'll be people hanging out on the parking lots. They'll be doing all types of things. This is something that happens in every community. It's fundamentally why we have zoning laws, is to make sure that you don't have those detrimental effects on a neighborhood environment. What we are asking is very simply this, right? Businesses need to follow the rules. They can't rack up 100 ordinance violations about unlawful sales, trash, all these other sorts of things, and not have some repercussions. And so we're suggesting that because everybody needs to be a part of keeping things safe. You or I, whatever community you live in, I live in Kansas City, we can be cited for letting our grass grow to 3 feet tall, right? This to me is no different. You got to take care of things as being part of a neighborhood. And I think that's going to be an important step, yes, of how we can be safer long term.
And we'll keep rooting for new prosecutor Melissa Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do appreciate your time as always.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. That is Quinton Lucas on KCMO Talk Radio. Coming up next, can we have a proud white guy moment for a second? Is that allowed?
Crickets. Not sure.
Maybe the answer is no.
Better email legal first.
No, but
I'll be down at HR.
I think we've got one, and I'll explain it next on KCMO.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
I know that like every group's allowed to have its pride moment, right? No pun intended here, given the month. But if we're allowed to have a proud white guy moment for a second here, something happened last night for the first time in going on 50 years. And that is Cooper Flagg became the first white American #1 NBA draft pick since Kent Benson in 1977. That's right. So there's hope for all of us. There's hope. Oh, man.
Well, it's Woody Harrelson's movie, White Guys Can't Jump. Bring that one out.
Oh, man. There's hope.
TJ McConnell from the Indiana Pacers, his nickname was the Great White Hope, but I think that's Cooper Flagg.
Yeah, I would agree. TJ McConnell's a nice bench player for the Indiana Pacers. You know, he did a good job in the NBA playoffs, but he is no Cooper Flagg.
Yeah, well, they only picked him first because he's white. What was the stupid argument about a year and a half ago? So what was over MVPs or something? And then somebody got it, and the whole argument, well, he just got it because he's white.
Oh, yeah. Was that? I remember that.
Dumbassery.
Yep. There's a lot of that going on. So, how about this? This is from Pat Forty, who writes for Sports Illustrated. The last white American male NBA Hall of Famers inducted as players came in 2019. And those players were Carl Braun, who last played in 1962, Bobby Jones, 1986, Jack Sikma, 1991, and Paul Westphal, 1984. John Stockton is the most recent white American Hall of Fame player in terms of when his career ended, which was back in 2003. Kevin Love, according to Pat Forty, seems most likely to end that streak when he retires. But, according to Pat Forty, he's not a Hall of Fame slam dunk. So, you know what? Cooper Flagg giving us all hope here on a Thursday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. And if you missed this, I know we're not an NBA town, but, you know, listen, we're allowed to have our moments. It's like when I think Jason Sehorn is the last white cornerback, not quarterback, cornerback in the NFL. And he played like 25 years ago for the New York Giants. Mm-hmm. So whenever these things come up about like, hey, we don't have the right number of certain head coaches or certain players or quarterbacks, no one ever talks about the other side of this. Hey, there hasn't been a white guy picked #1 in the NBA draft out of America in nearly 50 years. But hey, that's got nothing to do with anything outside
Sounds
of, well,
like inequity to me.
Oh, please, right? If we want to play that game. Mm-hmm. No, it's because sports is a meritocracy.
There you go.
The only meritocracy we've got left, for crying out loud. So last night, this happened in the NBA draft. And if you are a sports fan or a sports radio fan, you'll get a kick out of this. Guy gets picked by the Portland Trailblazers, and his name is Cedric Coward. Well, ESPN screwed this one up.
So the Portland Trailblazers select Colin Coward here. This is a young man with the ultimate bet on yourself story.
Colin Coward is a 60-year-old sports talk radio host.
Yeah, that was like, what? I follow the NBA once a month, and I knew that one.
Exactly.
I was confused because the Blazers drafted Yang Hansen, a Chinese fella, but I guess the Blazers traded this Cedric guy.
Oh, is that what they did?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so confusing.
Either way, Colin Coward's pretty fired up today that maybe him and Keatsman can put on a show together, you know?
Mark brings up, like, NBA draft's basically a fire sale. They pick a guy, and 20 minutes later, he's on another team.
That's true. The NBA is so jacked up. Oh, gosh. Coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, we'll get to one of our two governors very upset over potential cuts. We'll tell you next. Nice job on the rejoin, considering we're about to talk about SNAP benefits and food stamps. A little hungry heart for those who won't be able to eat because Donald Trump is going to cut SNAP benefits. No.
How dare you?
Oh, my goodness. Fox 4 reporting here. Democratic governors are calling out a key component of Republicans' so named. That is their verbiage at Fox 4. Big, beautiful bill expected to come up for a vote soon in the Senate. And we'll talk to Josh Hawley about this at 8:35, a half hour away on KCMO. They say more than $200 billion in projected cuts to the SNAP program could hurt people who rely on it for food and state budgets. Kansas Governor Laura Kelly says it will cause chaos in the Sunflower State and lead to some people going hungry. This per the governor of Kansas. See, every time there is a proposal to cut anything that the government does, it's somehow going to cause chaos. And very rarely does it ever actually cause chaos. But it's part of the fear-mongering that if you even consider the possibility of shrinking government and trying to attempt to get our spending under control, you're causing chaos. People are going hungry. Grandma's getting thrown off the cliff. It's the same. I mean, it's the same thing every damn time. It's so old.
My filter was activated on the word could. So at that point on, from there, I was filtering out going, yeah.
Yes.
It could. Might snow today, too.
Yeah, it could. I'm not going to bet on that one, but it could. Here was Laura Kelly to Fox 4.
Kansas's SNAP program helps address hunger and puts healthy food on the table for nearly 190,000 Kansans.
Okay, and this is really about targeting those who do not have children in the home, right? And are single, able-bodied adults. That's who the cuts are intended for. And in a state of 3 million people, this is not 190,000 Kansans who are being targeted here. It's not. There are not 190,000 Kansans out of 3 million who are out there single, able-bodied on food stamps. It's not the number. 190,000 people in the state may have some reliance at some point in time on food stamps, but many of them are not going to feel any impact. You know, if they're a single mother with a couple of kids, busting their butts, working their tails off, and they qualify, they're going to keep getting food stamps. And you understand that, right? I mean, I get that. That's not who the intended target is here, for lack of a better word. So this piece goes on to talk about Laura Kelly. It goes on to also hear from the Harvesters folks. Now, Harvesters Community Food Network serves 17 counties in Kansas, 10 in Missouri. As the story notes here, they deliver food for 55 million meals just in the last year. Fox 4 says with the proposed cuts to SNAP, food stamps, community assistance programs could be asked to do a lot more. Stephen Davis is the Harvester CEO. From the projections we are seeing, it would eliminate 7 to 9.5 billion meals that are provided via SNAP. The bill would also extend tax breaks and beef up national security while trimming spending on Medicaid and shift some SNAP funding responsibilities to the state. Okay, I don't want to hear from the Harvester CEO on any of this. I don't want to hear from the guy. A quick search here suggests that the Harvester CEO, a nonprofit in part funded by the government, is pushing, according to some sources, compensation of nearly $300,000 a year. Salary per charity navigator is $231,000. Some sources list his total comp at about $288,000 a year. Chief Resource Officer clearing about $200,000 a year. CFO about $160,000. And listen, I'm all about America, capitalism, making money, making as much money as you can, right? I'm totally cool with that. But the nonprofit world is different, right? Like, it just is. You know what you're getting into in the nonprofit world, especially when you're collecting some of your funding from the government. you then do not go out there and say, if there is a proposed cut against some program, boy, I guess people are just going to go hungry. Like, do you realize the optics of that when it takes me all of 5 seconds to figure out what the comp packages are for these nonprofit folks, to then for them to have them on the back end be like, oh, man, we're going to have people starving on the streets. Says the nonprofit CEO pushing $300,000 in comp. Like, come on. I know that Fox 4 and other local outlets are not going to highlight any of this because that's not their intended purpose. But I think that's relevant information when you hear these people screaming about this stuff and not willing to do 5 seconds of research to wonder, is this really the right messenger for something like this? I certainly don't think it is. So whether it's Governor Kelly trying to say 190,000 Kansans are going to be starving, or the Harvester CEO being like, oh, man, we're going to lose billions of meals per day or, per year because of these potential SNAP cuts. It's like, man, come on. I know everyone's got an agenda, but at least be a little bit intellectually honest about this whole thing, would you please?
I wonder why they're not saying, hey, we're going to kick some people off so that we can better serve the people on there because they're taking the food out of children's mouths. If you're not qualified and you're being a bum, you're draining the system. Why don't they fight for the person that they claim to be fighting for and saying, hey, these idiots are taken away?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Wouldn't you rather the people that need the help the most get the help and then say to yourself, we need to get some of the people who are mooching off the system out of the system, get them out.
They're not going hungry. We're kicking them off the system so we can better serve those that are in actual need.
Yeah. And listen, we're a generous country. We've got big safety nets. We're not getting rid of that. But we know that there is waste, there's fraud, there's people who abuse these systems because for too long, no one's been paying attention. And that's what this is really intended for here. That's it. On the text line, Pete, $231,000 for a CEO is cheap. Yes, it is compared to some major private sector positions. Like, I get that. I understand what you're saying there. But you have to understand, too, how the average median income household in Kansas and Missouri or just anywhere in the country is going to perceive this. You have to look at it from that perspective. Like, I understand, yes, there's plenty of people who are not close to being CEOs around Kansas City who are making way more money than that. Like, I understand that. That's not the point, though. Because the optics of the conversation matter when you're also in a nonprofit world where you're just not expected to make nearly as much money as the private sector. Being that guy saying, oh, boy, people are going hungry, it's just not a good look. It's not. Steven's in Johnson County. What's up, Steven? You're on KCMO. Go ahead.
Hey, how's it going? Good morning to you. They depend on your ignorance to stay in control. That's the reason why they do what they do. It never changes. It always changes for the people at the top, and they benefit off of you being poor. That's why they fight so hard to keep these programs going. That's what I want to say.
It's an excellent point. What's the old adage? Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Some people are not interested in teaching a man to fish, or a woman, or I guess a they, them. We'll throw them all in. I don't want to be sexist here. But that's absolutely true, right? The more people who are reliant on a government for fish, well, that's good for a preferred political party, is it not? To your point there, Stephen, if you want to create a world where there is continued reliance on the government, and if you're the party of growing government, then you know what? Forget 190,000 people in Kansas on SNAP benefits. Do I hear 290? Do I hear 390?
Where's some popcorn?
How about a damn 12 and a half, 15, 7 and a half, $20, 2 and a half, 5, 7 and a half. I yield back.
Where's my man Billy Long when I need him? That's an excellent point, Stephen, in Johnson County. I appreciate that. 913-408-7957. Also on the text line, if SNAP benefits are so important, maybe these governors should cut out some of their pet projects and fund the difference in their SNAP benefits. Stop with the common sense. Stop with the I've had enough of the common sense.
You mustard moo.
That's enough. We're done with that. That's a good point, though. Josh Hawley is 20 minutes away, the Missouri U.S. Senator on KCMO Talk Radio. We have not talked to him in a while, and he has not said anything about the men and women down at Whiteman and the attacks against the Iranian nuclear sites. So he will make those first comments in 20 minutes on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and streaming, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Coming up next, we'll explain on KCMO.
just want to get your attention. I really want to be all up in your head. Yeah. If you say daddy's home for me. And I know you've been waiting for this loving all day. You know your daddy's home.
Your daddy's home. We found John's Spotify playlist, and we decided to roll it out this morning on a Thursday, Friday Eve here on KCMO.
Oh, no, mine's got the original Shep and the Limelights. Daddy's home. It's like from the late 50s.
You and Bill O'Reilly, man.
I think Jermaine Jackson did it, though,
too.
too.
All right.
So.
Well, that was Usher. And that is the song that was on the White House's social media feed last night after the President of the United States returned from the NATO summit. And they had some fun with that. And whoever runs Trump's social media needs an immediate raise. Like, I know we don't want more government spending, but get that man or woman a raise. Get a raise. Get it right now. Because that was hysterical. And it comes in the wake of the NATO chief in the last couple of days referring to Donald Trump as the world's daddy. I kid you not.
We may do papers on it, Marco. Maybe we're going to do papers. I don't even know if you need them. They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes. Then it's easy to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes use strong language.
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while, you have to use a certain word.
I think you have to join the house.
Oh, Daddy uses strong language.
They don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Yes. So that was the NATO chief. After Trump's analogy between Israel and Iran was talking about they're like two kids in the schoolyard who need to fight for a couple of minutes, and then dad comes in and breaks them up. And then the NATO chief comes in and goes, yep, you know, and Trump didn't even refer to himself as the dad here, right? He just said, we break up the fight after a couple of minutes.
Right.
He was not being arrogant, being like, I'm the father, I'm the daddy around here. And the NATO chief is the one who goes, so you're like the daddy. Oh, daddy.
Daddy has to use strong words.
So yesterday, when he's doing this press conference, wrapping up his time in the Netherlands, you had a reporter from overseas ask the president whether or not he's the world's daddy.
Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, who is your friend, he called you daddy earlier. Do you regard your NATO allies as kind of children?
No, he likes me. I think he likes me. If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? No? He did it very affectionately. Daddy, you're my daddy.
He did it very affectionately. Oh, you're my daddy. You're my daddy. Well, here's the thing. As funny as that is, as great of a job as that was by the social media team, like the video was about daddy coming home and they show Trump landing back in the U.S. after the NATO trip. But the bigger picture is this. Daddy's home, meaning in the White House on the world stage, and the adults are back in charge. And it's hilarious to me when you think back 4 years ago, that was a line that was used by Grandpa's team there, right? Oh, the adults are back in charge. And it was like, okay, I mean, you know, you guys won. We'll give this a shot and see if the adults can actually, as you say, do the job. The problem is the adults are ready for the nursing home, obviously. We've learned that over the last few months.
They don't understand the concept of leaving it better than you found it. That's for sure.
Oh, that's for damn sure. So then Daddy came home on November 5th, right? The American people said it's time for Daddy to figuratively come home. And that's what the American people decided. And the world needed that. Say what you want about Trump, but who would you prefer navigating the foreign policy on the world stage right now, based on what's gone on in this country and around the world the last several years? A lot of things you can say about Trump. I don't like his approach, I can't say mean tweets, the mean truths, whatever you want to call it. But you have got to be able to sit here and take off your blue-colored glasses for a second and admit that on the world stage, having this guy look at these other countries and say, one, you're going to pay up on NATO. We're going to stop basically making sure you're safe in Europe. You're going to pay your fair share. You're going to contribute to this thing as much as you said you would. On top of that, you guys in the Middle East, if you don't abide by our deadlines, you're going to have problems. Let's get to the negotiating table and get a deal done. Putin, he's still trying to figure that thing out. But clearly, there is more respect on the world stage for the United States than there was just a year ago. And that is indisputable right now.
Well, and we should add to that, and perhaps the Biden 4 years will seem like a blip, but we'll recall Donald Trump walking up to the North Korean border.
Yeah.
And right there and facing Rocket Man. We'll recall a meeting that was said to have happened with the Taliban leader when he said, hey, we'll withdraw from Afghanistan, but if you harm any of our soldiers, well, you'll have hell to pay. And he told the guy to show him a picture of where the guy lived, the Taliban leader. So we know where you live.
Yep.
Okay, now we fast forward to what's happened in Iran. Maybe Putin's thinking a little bit differently now because, whoa, he's willing to confront people in North Korea, the Taliban, the Iranians. We know where you live. You think you can hide?
You
Got
can't.
the drone that'll find you.
You can't hide. Don't screw with us. That's the message here. And even for those of you who might say, well, the polling from the Europeans, they don't like Trump. They don't want to come to America. That's not the point. I don't care whether or not they like him or whether or not they would elect him. Do they respect the United States? And do the worst actors in the United States have more respect and willingness to come to the table and knock off their nonsense like they are schoolyard bullies in the wake of what's happened in this country over the last few years or a few months? And the answer is yes. And frankly, I don't think it's all that debatable. I don't. Like, we've seen the foreign policies of different sides over the last few years, and you tell me what's worked most effectively. Coming up, we are going to talk to Josh Hawley, Missouri U.S. Senator. It has been a minute since he has been on the show. He has been on the show, and we will ask him about the men and women who were obviously involved in the Iranian strike out of Whiteman. He has not made a public comment on that yet, as far as I've seen. And he will join us to talk about that, where he's at on the big, beautiful bill that he has had many opinions on, and much more with Josh Hawley, who is next on KCMO Talk Radio and streaming at KCMOTalkRadio.com.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM.
Always appreciate the time of Missouri U.S. Senator Josh Hawley joining us on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. We are always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Senator, good morning. Great to have you here. We appreciate your time. And I did want to start off with, obviously, what has been the global topic of the week. We have local ties to the men and women who came out of Whiteman Air Force Base and made those strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities. I had not seen anything yet from you publicly or on social media on those folks. So what would your message be to those individuals, of course, right down the road from us here in Kansas City?
Oh, they were just amazing. Thanks for having me, by the way. It's great to be with you. They just did an amazing job. We salute their terrific service. They performed their duty with distinction. All of our servicemen and women who were involved over the weekend, obviously, just performed tremendously. And I think, as I said the other day, I think the fact the president has been able to get a ceasefire and achieve some stability here in the last 48, well, I guess now it's been three days, 72 hours or so, is a real credit to him. And I think it's hilarious the Democrats now want to impeach the guy for bringing peace to the Middle East. What next? It's been a really good week for him.
Okay, so with the Iranian strikes in general, you've seen kind of some of the infighting on the right side of the political aisle on this. But in the wake of what's happened the last couple of days, how would you review what took place on Saturday and what it means for potentially peace or more peace in the Middle East?
Well, I think the ceasefire is a big deal. The Israeli ambassador actually was just in to see all the Republican senators yesterday. He was thanking the United States for standing by Israel, was saying that they hope that the ceasefire will hold. I think the next thing that's got to happen, Pete, is we've got to get to a place going forward where we keep Iran in its box, where we deny them, of course, the ability to reconstitute any kind of a nuclear, while we also reduce our overall troop presence and military presence in the region. Our long-term goal here, actually it needs to be our short to medium-term goal as well, is to have less military presence in that region, not more. And I think what the president's been able to achieve here with the ceasefire, and really, having a strong Israel is absolutely key to that. Israel's got to be very strong in that region, or else we'll be stuck there forever. So I think our goal has got to be make sure the ceasefire holds, get some sustainable deterrence on Iran, and then be able to draw down our forces and our presence, which frankly is needed elsewhere, like the southern border, and not to mention China.
So is it more just relying on Israel even more, or are there other potential allies you could see being basically our watchdogs in that part of the world?
Well, we need all of our allies there in the region to step up. This is where the president's in a good position now to drive a hard bargain. Obviously, Israel is doing its part, and this is an existential threat to them. So they will always be watchful and mindful. But, we need the Saudis to step up and do more. We need them to be a constructive force as they were in Trump's first term. I just think of the Abraham Accords. We need to get back to that path. The Israeli ambassador was talking about this yesterday, and he's right. We need to get back on the path of bringing the other partners in the region to recognize Israel, to, at least implicitly work with Israel to keep Iran isolated, to keep them from breaking out with the nuclear program or anything else. So I think the Saudis are going to play a big, big part here. And as I say, the president's really in a position of strength now to drive a hard bargain, and I hope that he will.
Josh Hawley is joining us on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. I know that you spoke to the president yesterday as well about NATO funding. That was a big part of his trip overseas. Just in terms of looking at the world as it is currently, Senator Hawley, and the fact that a lot of these countries were not chipping into NATO like they were obligated to, what does this mean for the United States and how maybe we are able to, I don't want to say pull back, but just reassess how much energy, time, focus, and money we are putting in to being basically the world's policeman?
Yeah, this is a huge point, and this is the point of trying to make it the Middle East. That our goal has got to be to stop being the world's policeman, and that includes Europe. In many ways, it begins with Europe. And the Europeans have been sandbagging for years. They can spend much more on their defense than they do. And Germany is the leading example of that. But it's true of all of them. France, United Kingdom. These are very advanced countries. These are not exactly poor countries. They can spend on their own defense. They're not doing it. The president, I know, went over there, delivered the message. Listen, guys, you've basically got, each of you has to double your defense spending so you can defend yourself and stop relying on the United States to do literally everything. I mean, sometimes these guys can't blow their nose without the United States holding the tissue. I mean, it's really getting to be ridiculous. So they step up and do more. We need to deliver that same message across the Middle East. We have to think about what our priorities are. Our southern border. Well, right now, we've got a lot of military on our southern border. I think folks don't realize how precarious that situation is. The president has done a phenomenal job, but he's holding it together with twisty ties in many ways. I mean, he's had to retask various units, law enforcement, military. We've got to get that under control. And then, of course, if you talk about overseas, our biggest long-term threat overseas is China. We've got to make sure that they don't try to challenge us, that they don't disrupt our economy any more than they're already doing. They don't become more imperial than they already are in terms of the Indo-Pacific and their aggression. So a lot of challenges, Pete. The Europeans need to do a heck of a lot more.
Senator, what about the big, beautiful bill, as it has been dubbed? You brought up some critiques of that, of course, over the last couple of weeks, especially on the Medicaid cuts thing. Take me through, your angle here, because a lot of Republicans are saying, we're not cutting Medicaid. We're just trying to cut out the waste, fraud, and abuse. But as far as I can tell, you seem to view that differently. So what are your concerns on that?
Well, I'm fine with cutting out waste, fraud, and abuse out of Medicaid. I mean, listen, you've got a lot of people, illegals. The Congressional Budget Office, which is really a liberal outfit, estimates that there are at least 1.5 million illegals on Medicaid. So all of those people need to come off. I mean, all of the fraud needs to stop. People need to be working. If you're on Medicaid and you can work and you're not, you should be. I think all of that is great. I mean, that's all. I think everybody agrees on that. My concern has been not with what the president negotiated in the House. In the Senate side, the Senate has come up with a new series of proposals, different from what the president had proposed and what had passed the House, that would cut rural hospitals. Now, Pete, half of our hospitals in Missouri are rural, and I don't want to see hospitals close in Missouri. The president doesn't want to see hospitals close. I just talked to him about it again last night, and his message was the Senate needs to quit screwing around with this bill, get back to what the House did, and get this thing passed. And I think that's 100% correct. I mean, listen, it's almost July. This should have been done months ago, I believe. So let's get this done. And I just think with the Senate, this bill is not getting better as it sits out there. It's getting worse. People are screwing around with it. They're trying to add Green New Deal subsidies back into this bill. Horrible. Why would we be funding any Green New Deal subsidies? So my message is, let's get back to what the president negotiated with the House, and let's pass this thing. I mean, let's get this thing to his desk.
I mean, you guys have control of the Senate, so who's possibly trying to get Green New Deal subsidies back into the bill?
Oh, well, all of the senators who have donors who are interested in it. I mean, this is everybody talks a good game on television, but then you look and see, what do people actually do? And you've got lots of senators who want to see billions and billions of dollars of those Green New scam, as the president calls it, the Green New scam subsidies, because they've got donors who are saying, well, wait a minute. I've got some interest in this. They've got hedge funds that have invested in it. Why we would spend $1 on any Green New Deal subsidy is totally beyond me. I mean, I just think it's ridiculous. And you add that all up, it is hundreds of billions of dollars in spending. All of that needs to be cut out.
And just to be clear, you're saying that there are Republicans in that camp as well.
Oh, there's all Republicans. Democrats don't matter for this exercise. Yeah. I mean, only Republicans are going to pass the bill. So, yeah, this is all Republicans doing this. But, listen, we have an ongoing fight in this party, Pete, between the corporatist wing of the party that loves these giveaways to banks and Wall Street and to the donor class and is secretly fine with all of this stuff, versus the Donald Trump wing of the party, which is who won the election. So my message is constantly, want to stick with the guy who won the popular vote. Just a suggestion, but I think maybe we'd want to go with what he ran on, what he promised the American people. Let's deliver on that.
So I saw that the president said basically he doesn't want anyone going home until this thing is on his desk by Independence Day next week. What would you put the odds at, Senator Hawley, that thing is actually on his desk by next week?
I think it's totally doable if the Senate will get it into gear. We need to get this. We need to quit fiddling around with it, and we need to pass it. And if we do that in the next couple of days, then I'm sure the House can pass it. Today's Thursday. So if we pass it in the next few days, the House can pass it next week on their side, and then that'd be it.
Okay.
So, it's not as hard as it sounds.
It never is, but it seems like it always gets more complicated than it needs to be. Senator Hawley on KCMO Talk Radio. And that is, by the way, a unique and rare approach for a senator to say, we don't want to make tweaks to a House bill, because it seems like the egos in the Senate say there's no House bill that's good enough for us. We've got to change it and make it better for our end of the, legislative body, right? That's how this usually goes.
Well, the problem now is there's too many people who are getting too many little goodies in there. And my view is this: on the major contours of this bill, the president's working class tax cuts, no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime. That was strong coming out of the House. On the Medicaid provisions, those were pretty darn good coming out of the House. I think we would do well in the Senate to say, okay, the president negotiated those things. If you need to tweak it, that's fine, but let's not rewrite whole provisions of it at this late hour.
Yeah.
And then create new problems. Let's get this thing done.
All right. Well, Senator Hawley, we do appreciate the time. As always, we'll be watching what happens with that Senate in the next couple of days, and we always appreciate you hopping on KCMO.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Josh Hawley, well done, as always, on 95.7 FM. Good to get his thoughts on the men and women down at Whiteman and what they pulled off last week on Saturday night with the Iranian nuclear attacks. Coming up next, speaking of that, remember when Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth brought up our boys, referring to the men and women involved with the strikes in Iran, and the media freaked out because there was, yes, a female pilot, and she is to be commended, just like obviously the men are. But the media had a meltdown over our boys when Hegseth said that on Sunday morning. Well, he got asked about that this morning, about the men and women at Whiteman. And we will play his response next on KCMO Talk Radio. Now, speaking of things you have to do next, you may be dragging your feet on an engagement. And if you think you're dragging your feet on an engagement, if it crosses your mind, then you are. I promise you. She thinks you're way behind the 8 ball here. So if you're looking for that reason to finally stop dragging your feet, Diamonds Direct is offering right now where you buy an engagement ring and you get a free wedding band to go along with it. Where else are you going to get a deal like that? And if you think you are sacrificing quality, I promise you, as a customer, you are not. A customer on multiple occasions, I will add. You will get, first off, white glove service. You will get the experience that you want out of a jeweler. Not where it's like, hey, your budget's X. All right, here's X plus 25%. No, you tell Angie and the team what your budget is. They keep you under it. They find you the best deal, and you get that engagement ring, and then you also get the wedding band. What more can you possibly ask for? So head on in there to 119th and Row. Tell them we sent you over at Diamonds Direct, or just start shopping right now also at diamondsdirect.com.
On the Thursday edition of the Guy Benson Show from New York City, Mary Catherine Ham, best friend of the program, she will be here on News of the Day. Coming up at 2, she will be here on News of the Day. Coming up at 2 o'clock on 95.7 KCMO.
Oh, this was just hilarious this morning. So we played some of this live in the 7 o'clock hour. Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon, along with Dean Raising Cane. And I got a Raising Cane's update for you, too. Like, actually one I'll share coming up here in a few minutes. But first, we've got Pete Hegseth getting asked about how on Sunday morning, he did a press conference after the attack on the Iranian nuclear sites, and he referred to the folks at a Whiteman Air Force Base who, of course, pulled off the strikes. He referred to them as our boys. Now, it turned out there was one female pilot who also was involved in the strikes. So the media learned about it, and they freaked out because Pete Hegseth said our boys. Now, it's always fascinating to me how the media suddenly can define a woman when they want to. And yes, of course, it's the men and women of Whiteman Air Force Base who pulled off this very effective strike. But this is such an irrelevant story. But Pete Hegseth got asked about it this morning and how he referred to the folks who pulled off the strike out of Whiteman as our boys when there was a female involved. And here's how he responded this morning.
Why not acknowledge the female pilots that also participated in this mission? The early messages that you sent out only congratulated the boys.
So when I say something like our boys and bombers, see, this is the kind of thing the press does, right? Of course, the chairman mentioned a female bomber pilot. That's fantastic. She's fantastic. She's a hero. I want more female bomber pilots. I hope the men and women of our country sign up to do such brave and audacious things. But when you spin it as, because I say our boys and bombers as a common phrase, I'll keep saying things like that, whether they're men or women. Very proud of that female pilot, just like I'm very proud of those male pilots. And I don't care if it's a male or a female in that cockpit, and the American people don't care. But it's the obsession with race and gender in this department that's changed priorities. We don't do that anymore. We don't play your little games. Yes, right there.
For certain that the uranium was.
That was outstanding by Pete Hegseth. You guys had this weird obsession with gender and a weird obsession with breaking everybody down into these cute little diversity boxes. And the reality is you're worrying about things that don't matter. You're worrying about things that people don't care about. I mean, as the father of 3 daughters, right? I'm sitting here and I'm saying, we all know what he was going for there. You really think that Pete Hegseth, who served, who's now the leader of the Pentagon, was specifically disrespecting a female bomber pilot when he said our boys? Talking at a press conference, he's talking off the cuff. You know, it's like some other things you can't do. I don't say guys in emails anymore. Now, I still do it in person because I just do it. When I say, hey, guys, it's not meant to disrespect any female that I happen to be in a room with or in a setting with, but it's just something that I happen to say. It's a term that I use. But I'm very cognizant in emails to not do it because, well, I understand that some people might be bothered by it. But when you're talking about a mission, right, and you're talking about striking Iranian nuclear plants, and you're Pete Hegseth, and you're the defense secretary, and you're like, yeah, boys did a great job there. And it's like, well, what about the one? Oh, come on. Do you really think, and trust me, she's a badass chick. I'll tell you that right now. She is. She deserves all the props of the guys. No doubt about it. My hunch here, and I can't guarantee it, but my hunch is that she's laughing about this. That would just be my hunch. So Pete Hegseth had that to say this morning. Now, Dean Raising Cane, of course, is the other guy who was at the podium this morning. And what an amazing nickname. I just love it. Dan Raising Cane. I keep saying Dean. Dean Cane. Dan Raising Cane is the 22nd chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was obviously a guy who was putting together an incredible display this morning in the 7 o'clock hour showing how these nuclear strikes were so effective and what they did and how they were able to achieve this mission to basically take out these nuclear sites in 3 key locations around Iran. So credit to him. He got up there as well. But there actually is a Raising Cane's update here I'll give you. This from Fox Business Network. Raising Cane's is continuing to increase its restaurant count. They've got 3 more locations coming. Ontario, Connecticut, Ontario, Ohio. I should say, I'm reading the list here. Ontario, Ohio, Wethersfield, Connecticut, and Wichita, Kansas. So if you are heading down that way, you will be getting a Raising Cane's. And this year, they have launched over 20 new locations across America. They are going to open nearly 100 new restaurants across several new markets in 2025 by year's end. They've got now 800 chicken finger locations across the U.S. Last year, they opened up 118 new ones. I took my brother there for the first time when he was visiting about 2 years ago. He can't stop talking about Raising Cane's. Guy just loves it. He's such a big fan.
It's solid. We've got a few around here.
Yeah,
I still like Chick-fil-A best, but Raising Cane's is solid too.
Yeah. John disagrees. I'm seeing his head shaking there. But I'm with you, Mark. I took him up by the airport. There's one up that way before he was traveling back. And he's like, give me some Raising Cane's. Easy does it there, buddy. Easy does it. We started off the show breaking some news to you here this morning on KCMO Talk Radio. And we had to get the reaction of some very important people in Kansas City. We'll do it next. Just was coming back from a little break here, personal break, and I got to meet a listener out in the hallway who was picking up his tickets for Country Stampede tonight. And I think they got a big upgrade from Luke Bryan to Eric Church tonight as their headliner. Luke Bryan announcing that he's sick, he's got some illness, and they say, Eric Church, we're calling you in from the bullpen, and that's a big upgrade as far as I'm concerned.
Like that?
I like it a lot.
No, I had the good fortune of talking to a listener online, so I get to apologize for saying, hey, we're emailing them. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry.
You know.
Hey, they're right here. It's
bad.
old school, man.
Yeah,
it's
it
old
is.
school. You
I
gotta
love old school.
I know, you do. Got to come pick up those tickets like the old days, John. Oh, I love it.
I saw Luke Bryan had an issue last weekend in Arkansas where he couldn't finish the show because of his vocals. So I was kind of wondering if something might happen with him, but I didn't want to speculate till it was announced.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm glad that all the folks who won, we gave away 13 4-packs of Country Stampede tickets yesterday.
You imagine Luke with the sore throat. You're like, what's this, a Bob Dylan concert?
Yeah. Yeah. You got Wally Pipp, though, on this one, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, anyway, it's 9:06 on a Thursday morning. It is going to be hot out there tonight, but at least you got Eric Church. So the other thing you got to know, if you're on the Kansas side of the state line, is that if you were hoping that the Star Bond offer was going to expire, I am hearing, as I reported this morning, that offer is going to ultimately be extended retroactively. This is something that we expected to happen, but Kansas is of the belief that it is in the mix for these two pro sports teams, the Chiefs and or the Royals. So here's a little nuance, though. Something we thought was like, all right, if they're going to extend the Star Bond offer, don't extend it for 12 months. Let's not do this song and dance for another year. We don't want to do that, do we? Well, if you read the language of the bill, they don't have a choice. I know. You're getting upset.
I'm getting pissed now.
I'm sorry. Don't shoot the messenger here. They don't have a choice. They have to extend it either for 12 months or not extend it at all. Now, there can be a quasi-deadline here that this legislative body gives, and they put out and they say, listen, we're extending the offer. We legally have to extend it for a year. However, you got 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, whatever it is, and we're not going to consider this after this drop-dead date that we implement. But the legislation says it's basically 12 months or nothing, so we're going to get a 12-month extension.
But you remember when Trump said 2 weeks? Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the teams could hold up their end of the bargain and hold steadfast to their own deadlines that they've also put out there for themselves, saying middle of the summer, we want to have an answer. But why do that? I mean, they haven't kept to one of their own deadlines in 2.5 years, so why would they start now, right? But this is going to happen. So this morning I asked Mayor Lucas about this, and here was his response.
I mean, look, there are maybe a few distinct things I can do. One of the most obvious ones, which I think probably a growing percentage of your listeners, and frankly, people on the left, right, and in the middle.
Hang on. Let me get the right answer here from Mayor Lucas.
I mean, I disagree, and I have great respect for.
All right, never mind. I think I had the wrong clips there. But anyway, the mayor of Kansas City came on the show this morning, and I'll get to part of what he had to say here in a second, because the other big topic that we talked about with him was the fact that some of the big economic leaders in Kansas City came out yesterday and said, hey, we don't really care where these teams land. This is what Tim Cowden said, and he is part of the group that's involved with the Economic Council and the economic development of the Greater Kansas City Chamber. Here is what he had to say yesterday.
Does the regional business and civic community have a preference for which side of the state line or which specific location the teams land? No. As long as the teams land within the KC region, we're going to support their decision. Full stop.
All right. Now, I understand that approach from him. I do. But it leaves out one important point. Kansas decided to get in the mix here and make a bid for these two teams. Nothing illegal about what they did, but they did break a border truce. They absolutely did. This was agreed to by Laura Kelly and Mike Parson back in 2019. And what the border truce basically said is that we were not going to compete for businesses that already were in the Kansas City area. The pair signed an agreement pledging to end the use of tax incentives to lure companies across the state line that do not create new jobs for the region. The Chiefs going to Kansas doesn't do anything for creating new jobs in the region. Helps Kansas, doesn't do anything for the region. Same thing with the Royals. So if we're just calling it like it is, the state of Kansas broke the border war truce. Now, you may say, I don't care. I want the teams in Kansas. That's your prerogative, but let's just be honest. They broke the truce. And the loser here is the taxpayers. These teams are not, or these states are not competing against each other. They're not. They're using the taxpayer to compete against each other. That's different. If these two states said, we are going to create legislation to get the lowest taxes possible that we can get, income taxes coming down, property taxes coming down, sales taxes coming down, because we want to be the most tax-friendly and free market state in the country, to get these teams to our state, if we're Kansas, or in Missouri, we're going to do this to keep these teams in our state. That's competing. It is not competition to say we're going to use taxpayer dollars through these air quotes incentive programs to get you to come to our state or get you to stay in our state if you're Missouri. That's using the taxpayers. That's pitting the taxpayer against each other. That's not state competition. State competition is when businesses leave LA and go to Dallas, when they leave New York and they go to Nashville. That's competition. This is not competition. If there's a Star Bond district in Kansas that includes the Nebraska Furniture Mart, and I'm just making that up as an example here, the increases in tax revenues that come into Nebraska Furniture Mart that then theoretically get used to pay off a Royal Stadium or a Chief Stadium is a loss for the taxpayer, because you cannot suggest to me that Nebraska Furniture Mart is making more money because there's a ballpark nearby. That's absurd. But that's theoretically what happens in a Star Bond district. You draw it and you suggest if this business goes from $100 million in revenue to $150 million in revenue, the additional taxes on that $50 million spread can be used to pay off the infrastructure of the stadium or whatever in the Star Bond district. Nebraska Furniture Mart was going to do better anyway. There's nothing to suggest that a stadium drives business to a Nebraska Furniture Mart. The loser then is the taxpayer, because theoretically, that Nebraska Furniture Mart doing better, those additional sales taxes would go to a county, a city, or the state to be used for taxpayer needs. Instead, it's paying off the bonds on a stadium. On the Missouri side, we know what the game is there. All right, we've talked about that a lot the last couple of weeks. Monies that were going to the state are now going to potentially pay off bonds on a stadium upgrade. The taxpayers lose. Now, you may say that, and I've actually been of this belief that there's some inherent value in pro sports teams obviously being in communities. There's pride that surrounds that. I totally agree with that. And you can't put a value, a monetary value on it. But there's no doubt there's value to having the Chiefs and the Royals here. And I'm not one of these like black and white economist types. As much as I love Patrick Tuohy, there's a value that is inherent that you can't put a monetary figure on to having pro sports teams here. There's no doubt about it. So I get that. But let's also just be very transparent on the game that's being played by both sides of our state line, both leadership groups, and oftentimes on both sides, Republicans. So this morning, I got the mayor's response to the Economic Development Council and the Greater Kansas City Chamber, basically saying, we don't care where these teams land. And here's what he said.
I mean, you know, I disagree, and I have great respect for Tim and I guess the group of people who assembled, but Pete, let's, one part of what we've learned from the Trump era and I guess the Mamdani era is that people want truth and authenticity in politics. Is there any person in this whole region who doesn't think that there is a battle between incentives in both states right now? Every other week on the news, there's a story of, well, Kansas will give them $1.7 billion, so Missouri passes a law that pays for half of a stadium for $1.5 billion, so they're at $800 million. How much will Clay County give versus Kansas City versus Jackson County versus Johnson County? I mean, it's obviously a border war incentive battle. It is obviously what everybody actually was trying to get rid of.
That's the mayor of Kansas City this morning, and you know what? He's right. Now, on the text line, you disagree with me here, and I'm happy to take that. Pete, this is much different than a business moving across the state line. I have no problem with Kansas competing for this. No problem with Kansas competing for this. The taxes generated by use is what pays for the stadiums in Kansas. That is not true. That is not true. A star bond district is not going to be a usage tax at the stadium. A star bond district is drawing in as many businesses as they can realistically get away with in the areas of the stadium to suggest that increased tax revenues in this made-up district that they will draw up will then be used to pay off the bonds. That will be restaurants, that would be hotels, that would be really any business. Now, there's not a tax increase. Let's be clear here. It's not a tax increase. But what it is that any business within that district will then look at any increased revenues that they have. And the taxes on the increased revenues will be used to pay off the bonds. It's not a usage tax at the stadium. That's not what a star bond is. That's not what a star bond district is. If it was, I would say fine. But I don't believe they can generate the revenues with a usage tax or just a sales tax at the stadium to pay off the bonds on what would be a $3-4 billion project. That's why these star bond districts exist. And they justify it by saying having this business, this stadium, this museum, this whatever, having this in this part of town helps everybody around it. And that may be true in some business models. I have a hard time believing that would be the case, especially for a football stadium where you're playing, 8 games a year, maybe 10 or 11 if you're talking about playoffs, but that's it. So it's totally, totally different than what that texter is noting here. 913-408-7957. I'm not really interested in picking winners and losers when it comes to where these teams go, but I just want to at least make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what's going on here, because I think that is important and it's been undercovered, except for right here on KCMO Talk Radio with this show. And of course, Keatsman Uncanceled, who is coming up at 10 o'clock on 95.7 FM.
Dave Ramsey here, and you're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now airing on FM at 95.7.
We got you at 913-408-7957 on KCMO Talk Radio. We have Steven. He is in KCK. What's up, my man?
Hey, buddy. You know, I heard Ty Masterson say that border war truce wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. No one is regarding that as any. You know, Laura Kelly doesn't deserve credit for any of that stuff. But you know, I respect the point of view that you're making. My point is that, you know, everybody knows that I never hear Patrick Tuohy answer is, you know, if you put this thing to a vote in Wyandotte County, it would probably pass by 60, 70, 80%. That people want this. We know there's risk. We can handle the risk, spread it out over 20 or 30 years. When I moved here as a kid from Chicago, people would laugh at me and say, "Why are you going to Kansas City? There's nothing out there." And now we're top 20, top 25 in the world for travel and leisure. I mean, it just makes my head spin because we're the world champions. We have that identification, that calling card immediately. Oh, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Taylor Swift.
Yeah, but here's the beauty. Here's the beauty of it. Here's the beauty of it, right? Kansas City does, you're right, get a lot of earned media, as it's called, by having the skyline and Arrowhead shown to tens of millions of people on Sunday Night Football. But guess what? Right now, Kansas, at least the Kansas side of the Kansas City Metro, benefits tremendously from this without having a dime of its own monies put towards it, right? I mean, you get basically all the benefits because when people come here, let's be honest, if someone moves here from Chicago, where you came from, they're going to look at the suburbs and they're going to say, wait, so I could live in Johnson County and get all the benefits of Kansas City, but have some better schools and maybe, you know, some perceived better, and I'm using my air quotes here because better is in the eye of the beholder, but you get the point, better suburban areas to live in. You get all the benefits and there's no cost to you at all.
Well, when I moved here, it was, they thought it was your predecessor, the Mike Murphy cattle drive. You know, that we were still running cattle through the streets. You know, this is how far. You got to understand. This is how far we've come. We've become one of the greatest cities of the world, and I just don't want to get in this mentality. We can't ever have anything because there's a risk. There's a risk in everything.
That contradicts, though, some of what you're saying. If you believe in the greatness of your community, then stand on your own 2 feet and say, you know what, take us or leave us. It's kind of like Overland Park with Black and Veatch, you know? Overland Park, same thing. Overland Park's bending over for Black and Veatch potentially on $300 million in subsidies. Why? They're here. You've got according to some rankings, top 10 community in the country. Stand on your own 2 feet.
Well, I'm not the one to talk about that because I wanted the ballpark at the Sprint. I think the best site is the Sprint campus for the ballpark. So I'll just leave that.
Steven, you're a good caller, but that just killed your credibility. I'm sorry. Thank you. I appreciate you. And I know, you know, too, because I'm seeing this on the text line. I get it. There's no additional tax on the Star Bond. I understand it. But once again, depending on how the district is drawn, that is really what determines whether or not this is a good deal. If we draw a Star Bond district around a currently empty field and we say new sales tax revenue pays off the bond, and we say totally different than including current businesses within that district. And that's what we'll have to wait and see on as well. All right? 913-408-7957. But we are not going anywhere on this conversation. And I know that is unfortunately not something some of you want to hear. But I am just the messenger in all this. That's all we are. Our caller of the day is coming up on KCMO and more with you on 95.7 FM.
from the nation's heartland. It's Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
I did want to share this with you. I thought it was funny. I haven't shared it yet this morning, and I got someone in Kansas City media who sent me a text, and I like this person a lot, but I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Come on, man.
Can't be doing this. Person sent me a note early this morning after we reported that the Star Bond offer would be extended, and they said, hey, where'd you see that Kansas was extending the Star Bond offer? And I wrote back, me, with a little upside-down smiley-faced emoji. And then they, like I say this out of respect to this person, who I do like. They write back to me, who was your source, ? Oh, like, you can't be serious, right? Said, I love you, bro, but I ain't giving you that info. I'm not doing it, okay?
How dare you?
There's no way. You're not getting that information out of me. Guys I work with, we don't know each other's sources. We have them. We trust them. We trust each other enough to compare notes that we have. Like some people are looking at the whole thing, well, the Chiefs are still maybe looking at Kansas and saying, whoa, wait, hold on. Keatsman said, well, no, Keatsman said they canceled contracts on land. Right? He's right. He was right. Everything I heard after he reported it, he's absolutely right. But there's a lot of land in Kansas.
Yep.
I mean, geez.
Yep.
So one thing we all know, it's that. So his reporting is spot on. And so far, I think our reporting will prove to be accurate on this stuff as well. So, and there's a lot of media outlets in town who have not been right, especially those on the radio side of things. There you go. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Well done. You got your cue. Nice work, man. That was fast. Excellent job. So, we'll see how this all plays out. But we've been leading the way, and we'll keep leading the way. With that, our caller of the day was tied to a topic we discussed earlier. That is Laura Kelly, very upset as the Kansas governor, that food stamp cuts may be coming in the big, beautiful bill. Here's what she had to say.
Kansas's SNAP program helps address hunger and puts healthy food on the table for nearly 190,000 Kansans.
So that was Laura Kelly. Fox 4 ran a big story on this last night. They talked to the Harvester CEO, who was also doing doom and gloom. But our caller of the day had an outstanding point on potential cuts to the SNAP program, a.k.a. food stamps.
It's the Mundo in the Morning Caller of the Day on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
Steven's in Johnson County. What's up, Steven? You're on KCMO. Go ahead.
Hey, how's it going? Good morning to you. They depend on your ignorance to stay in control. That's the reason why they do what they do. It never changes. It always changes for the people at the top, and they benefit off of you being poor. That's why they fight so hard to keep these programs going. That's what I want to say.
Well done by Stephen in Johnson County. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime, right? Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. And for those who are interested in just giving a man fish, and woman, you get the point, though. That's the expression. They, them, I don't much care. You get the point. If you just give a man a fish every day, they're more reliant on you to give them the fish. If you teach a man to fish, well, suddenly there's some self-reliance there. They know what they're doing. They may not need big mommy or daddy government to take care of them, John.
Can you imagine taking fishing lessons from Trump and or Biden? And here's Biden out there going, hey, look at my legs. They're hairy.
What are we talking about?
Trump's like, that's as far as you can cast it?
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
Man,
classic.
That would be outstanding. What I would pay for that. Unbelievable.
What a series.
Oh, that would be
Fishing
great.
With number 45 and 7.
Netflix is all over it, man.
Fishing with 46.
Oh, that is so good.
Bring your life jacket.
Yeah, seriously. Oh, that's great. Now, with the big, beautiful bill hopefully heading down the home stretch, Josh Hawley said this morning here on KCMO that he believes it can be on President Trump's desk by Independence Day. That is what Donald Trump wants to see happen. But he said the Senate's got to get out of its own way, basically. That was Josh Hawley last hour. If you missed that, it'll be up on the podcast. But there was a protest yesterday. I can't believe this even got covered, but I guess it was a light news day in Kansas City. Heck, when they're doing news packages on the new Mahomes-Kelsey restaurant, that literally is just a bunch of studs. I guess it's a light news day. That was Tuesday night. I couldn't believe it. Every local media outlet did let's take a tour of the 1587 steakhouse. And I'm thinking, oh, cool, it must be done. It was just a bunch of dudes in hard hats with plywood in the building.
I want to go for the media tour when they're serving the steak. That's what I want to do.
Of course you do, Mark. Of course you do. And you're also hoping you get a, FanDuel bonus on your deposit when you go take the little tour as well.
That's right.
Get $15.87 for free on your FanDuel account when you use the promo code Mahomes.
See what you did there.
Yeah. So I couldn't believe that was leading the news. So then this last night didn't really shock me, but it was KCTV5 reporting this.
Well, people gathered in Olathe today to oppose that big, beautiful act. Protesters stood outside Republican U.S. Senator Jerry Moran's office. They're concerned about that bill gutting Medicaid and taking thousands of people off SNAP benefits, as well as putting rural health care systems at severe risk. And they're hoping to send a message to Senator Moran.
It's a bad bill for Kansans, and it's a bad bill for the country. And we just want to urge him to do the right thing and to vote against H.R. 1.
We did reach out to Senator Moran's office. His staff are not commenting on the protest.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, well, how big was this protest at Jerry Moran's office in Olathe, which Mark didn't even know existed. But I drive by this sign. They got a sign out there at College in Ridgeview saying Jerry Moran's office, 2.5 miles down the road. Never been to it, driven by it, didn't realize I drove by it, but you drive right by it down there on College. And there were 15 people at the protest. No, not 50, not 500, 15. I counted them all on TV. I paused my television and I counted them 1, 2, 3, 14, 15. Okay. 15 people. That's not a protest. That's 15 people who are bored with something to do. I mean, I could literally find 15 people here in the building in about 5 minutes to go do something if I wanted to do that. That's not a protest, John.
Protest mistaken for line at coffee shop. Film at 10.
Yeah. Oh, man. That is exactly right. You can't sit here and tell me that you get 15 people to stand on the street corner. How does the local media even know about it? Somebody has to reach out to a media outlet and say, hey, we're going to have a protest at Jerry Moran's office. And I guess the media showed up, and here's what I'm guessing happened. They're like, okay, we need something for today, right? Sure, it's big, beautiful bill. It's local. We'll do it. And they show up, and it's like 15 people, and they're like, well, crap, we're here. We might as well do it, right? Might as well just do a package on this and, throw it together. We got to cover something on the local news.
Yeah, throw it together. It kind of seemed like the guy was maybe doing something else, and they said, hey, why don't you get down there? Okay, what's this that I'm doing?
And then when you're there, you got the camera guy, you got the reporter. It's like, well, now it's like, I guess we'll do it. But the problem is, it's not even like knocking KCTV5. The people that are at the protest look so ridiculous when there's 15 of them standing at the street corner, and the average age is clearly over 60. And that's with like a couple of 20-year-olds. When the average age is over 60 and there were like 2 20-year-olds there, that's a bad sign for you. It doesn't look good.
Oh, it was the line to the dispensary then, not the coffee shop.
So that's what it looked like. And it's like, man, this is optics-wise not what you're going for. If Jerry Moran saw that, no wonder his staff was like, I got no comment. Okay, 15 people standing on the street corner, upset when I oversee and I have 3 million constituents is not something that makes me move the needle and is not something that I'm going to spend any time responding to. No way, no how. Next on KCMO, we'll wrap it up here. I do want to see something preserved in Kansas City that may fall by the wayside and be no more. We'll tell you what that is next on KCMO.
Stream Mundo in the morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Well, I hope that Kansas City, and it really isn't going to have anything to do with the city, but I hope that George Toma Field, the wiffle ball field at 52nd and Warnell, is able to be maintained because it is a great wiffle ball field. And as the Kansas City Star writes here, the wiffle ball field across from Luce Park may go away. And the reason it may go away is because, well, the property owner, Joe Ungashik, is selling his home that is adjacent to the field and is part of his land. He's a big sports fan. He had this wiffle ball field built, I want to say it was about 10 years ago. They got a big fake green monster out there in left field. It's great. We played our wiffle ball tournament with the Battle Within, one of our many great partners here on KCMO, last year. We did actually a Team Mundo v. Team Keatsman. This was before Kevin was officially part of the KCMO Talk Radio family. And I'm sure Kevin knows the score, but they won. I'll just say that.
13-4, I believe.
Is that what? Yeah, okay. I was going to say, it's 13-4. No, that sounds about right. See, it's funny how my memory would have been like, yeah, it was probably like 8-4. But no, it was a blowout. Of course, it was a blowout. And I mean, I'll tell you what.
Keatsman said you went deep, though. So
you're right. I hit one home run.
We talked about it that day.
Yes.
That feeling that you have of doing something well
yes.
in that moment.
You're right. It did happen. I did hit as a left-hander, it's easier to hit a home run there at the old George Toma wiffle ball field. I did have a line drive home run, but didn't really much
the breeze
matter.
Was out of the southeast. You got a little lift in you.
I got a little bit of a lift. But yeah, I mean, you should have seen Keatsman playing catcher, man. I mean, that guy, as nimble as they come in that catcher's position. I mean, he had multiple tip foul balls that he was diving for and some big hits. So Team Keatsman won that one. But it's just a really cool field that does a lot of great charity work, Battle Within, other organizations do fundraisers there and whatnot. And the reality is the homeowner is moving. So they wrote this big piece in the Kansas City Star about how, this wiffle ball field has become kind of a staple for the area. And they hope that it obviously continues on. But as Joe Ungashuk said here, it's not really going to be up to me. Now, I will slightly disagree with Joe on this. He said here to the Star, just to be clear, the hope is that the next owner loves and maintains the vision for the neighborhood wiffle. But of course, that will be up to them. Come on. Now, I suppose you could sell to somebody who's like, don't worry, Joe, I'm going to take care of the wiffle ball field. And then it's like, no, I'm going to get rid of the wiffle ball field. That's always a possibility. Somebody could screw you. But it's like selling a baseball team. When John Sherman bought the Royals as the majority owner, it was like, we're keeping this team in Kansas City. You can have a gentleman's agreement on what is in the best interests of a team or a part of your property, or in this case, a wiffle ball field. I don't think all the onus can be put on the new owner here. I think some of this can be on the seller to find the right buyer who has the vision for the property that you see fit. It doesn't mean the owner can't change their mind years down the road, where the owner's like, I'm sick of having random people in my backyard playing wiffle ball. Trust me, I know a lot of people who would hate that. But you can find the right buyer to maintain your vision. I don't think we can just throw our hands up and say, well, I hope the buyer likes what they got here and they keep this. I don't think that's entirely fair, John.
Well, in an unrelated item, a Star Bond district is being created in Kansas from 47th Street South on Rainbow. So, I mean, they're looking to get involved.
Oh, that's
I'm
great.
literally thinking, better wiffle ball than pickleball. If we can build all these courts, let's get some wiffle ball fields around.
Yeah. And that was part of Joe's vision for the area. So it is fantastic. It is a great place to do just wiffle ball and charity events. I hope it's maintained, but obviously we don't know what the future is going to be. And actually, a very good piece by the Kansas City Star. I give credit where it's due. This is the good local stuff that, in part these newspapers should be doing, whether it's in Kansas City or anywhere else. On a final note here on KCMO, props to all white American males this morning. Cooper Flagg.
Represent.
Yes. the first white American number 1 NBA draft pick in 48 years. Kent Benson in 1977. The last white American to go number 1 in the NBA draft. How about that?
Any relation to Guy?
My guess, based on seeing Guy, is no.
Okay.
That's just my hunch. And I love Guy, but, I think he would understand what I was going for there.
Maybe Cooper is a little better boxer than Kent. Kent's 0-1 against Lou Alcindor there. Kareem.
But this is a rarity. Once again, a reminder that sports is the final meritocracy that we actually have in American society in 2025. Despite the fact that so many in sports media want to claim racism every chance they can get because they are more liberal than your news media, sports is simply a meritocracy. And as a white guy, I'm not sitting here saying, we haven't had one of us picked in 48 years. Oh, my gosh, it's finally time. This is very much little tongue-in-cheek here as we talk about it. I don't really care. But if the shoe is on the other foot, you know where the conversation would be headed.
A white kid from Maine can do it. You can do it too.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, my goodness. That's right. I didn't realize that. He was from Maine, of all places. Man, go figure. Good for Cooper
I
Flagg.
think he has 3 brothers too, so there could be more flags on the way.
Whoa, we could be on a run here of white dudes at the top of the NBA draft. Don't put too much pressure on them, though. That's not fair. It's not fair. We saw how that worked out with LeVar Ball's kids, right? Didn't exactly pan out like we thought they would. With that, we are done on a Thursday morning. If you missed Josh Hawley, first time on the show in a while, he gave his reaction to the men and women at Whiteman Air Force Base, pulling off the incredible mission from last Saturday in Iran. It was, as far as I could tell, his first public comments on that. So we appreciate him hopping on the show. And Mayor Lucas, they'll both be up on the podcast when we are done here in just moments. Keatsman Uncanceled coming up in 7.